Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to go over how to find the volume of a cylinder, and we have some notes and examples we're going to go through. So first, let's look at the top of our notes. It says the area of a circle is area equals pi times r squared. This information is important when finding the volume of cylinders, cones, and spheres. Today we're going to go over how to find the volume of cylinders. So first I want to review some information about circles. So if I drew a circle on my paper and I drew a line directly through the center all the way to the other side, this line is called the diameter. It goes all the way from one side to the other side. I remember this by thinking of it as that it makes a big D when we do this for the diameter. Now, if I only had a line that went from the center point to one side, so only halfway, this is called the radius. The radius is half the diameter. So very important we remember that information. I did highlight this here on our notes. It says, caution, if you are given the diameter, you need to divide it by 2 to determine the radius. Because remember, the radius is half of what the diameter is. Okay? So the volume of a cylinder is the base times the height. The base of a cylinder is a circle. If we look at this visual right here, we see that our base is a circle. To find the volume of a cylinder, you multiply the area of your base, so the area of the circle, times the height of the cylinder. The formula for this is volume equals area pi times r squared times the height. So the area of our base times our height. And we're going to use this formula to find the volume of different spheres today for practice. Our directions say, find the volume of the cylinder to the nearest tenth. So that's some important information with rounding. We need to make sure that we are rounding our problems correctly. And then it says to use 3.14 for pi. So we're going to use that number for pi. And this is our formula. Okay, so when we're doing this, we need to find the radius and find the height to be able to plug it into our formula. So always start off by finding what r is and what h is. Remember, r stands for radius, h stands for height. So if we look at our first example here, I can see that the height of my cylinder is 10 inches. And the radius, remember, radius only goes to the center point here, so this is a radius, and it is 3 inches. So now that we have that information, we can plug those values into our formula, substitute them in. So we have volume equals pi times r squared times the height. And now I'm going to plug in the radius and plug in the height. Volume equals pi times 3 squared times our height. Now remember, when you're squaring something, it's just the number times itself. So 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 10 is 90. So the volume of this cylinder is 90 pi. And that is the volume of the cylinder. Now, if we wanted to express this as a decimal, we would multiply 90 times 3.14, which would give us the approximate volume of this cylinder. So volume is approximately, so now we're just going to take 90, multiply it by 3.14, and that gives us 282.6, and this is the tenths place, so it's already rounded. Do not forget your units. Remember when we are talking about volume, that is cubed. So it's 282.6 inches cubed, or cubic inches. And that is our answer. Sliding on over to our next one here. Again, we need to look at our cylinder, find the radius, and find the height. So the height of this cylinder, it's tilted on its side. So the height right here is 13 centimeters. And this line goes all the way across. So this is our diameter. We don't need the diameter, we need the radius. So we need to take this diameter and divide it by 2. 6.4 divided by 2 is 3.2. So half of this, just to that center point right here, is 3.2. That's our radius. Now we're going to take that information, substitute it into our formula. And I always write my formula so it's easy for me to plug that information back into it and I don't make any silly mistakes. Volume equals pi times the radius squared, so 3.2 squared times the height, which is 13. Now you can use a calculator for these problems. So I'm just going to type 3.2, hit the squared button, times our height. So the volume equals 133.12 pi. Now, if I want to write that as a decimal, which it does want us to, it says use 3.14 for pi, and we need to round to the nearest tenth. So I'm going to take this number and I'm going to multiply it by 3.14. We're using 3.14 for pi, which is going to give us the approximate volume of this cylinder. And when we look at this number for rounding, we look at the tens place, we look to the neighbor to the right. 5 or more, you add 1 more. This is a 9, so we need to add 1 more to this 9 right here, which means our ones place is going to go up. And our answer is 418 centimeters cubed. Right, before we start this next example, I want you to pause the video, try it on your own, see if you can find the radius and the height and plug those values into our formula, and then check back to see if you did it correctly. So looking at our cylinder, the height of this cylinder is 12 feet. The radius, this only goes to the halfway point, so we know it is the radius, is 4 feet. We're going to take that information, plug it into our formula. Volume equals pi r squared times the height. Volume equals pi times 4 squared times our height. 4 squared, 4 times 4 is 16, or you can use your calculator. 4 squared times the height, which is 12. That gives us 192. This is the answer expressed in terms of pi, but I want to write it as a decimal. So I'm going to multiply that number by 3.14. So the approximate volume of this cylinder, we need to round to the nearest tenth. So if I look at my tenths place, I look to the neighbor to the right. 5 or more, we add 1 more, so we need to add 1 more to that. So adding 1 more to 8 is 9. So we have 602.9, and our units is feet cubed. Again, I want you to try this next one on your own, pause the video, and then check back with me. We need to identify the height of our cylinder. The height is 6 feet, or 6 inches. The diameter, this goes all the way across, so we know it's the diameter is 10. We don't need the diameter, we need the radius. So we need to divide the diameter by 2 to find the radius. Remember, the radius is half of the diameter. So it's 5 inches is our radius. Now we're going to plug all this information back into our formula and find the volume. So we have volume equals pi times 5 squared times the height. Again, you can use your calculator if you don't want to do the mental math. 5 squared times the height, 150 pi. So this is in terms of pi. We need to write it as a decimal, so I'm going to multiply by 3.14 for pi. And the volume of this cylinder is approximately 471 cubic inches. Remember, volume is always cubed. Okay, our last 2 examples are word problems, but we follow the exact same steps. We pull out that information that we need. We still need the radius and the height. So it says a drum company advertises a snare drum that is 4 inches high, underline that important information, and 12 inches in diameter. Find the volume. So what I like to do with word problems is, if I can, I like to draw a visual to go along with it. So I'm just going to sketch out a little cylinder. I'm going to label the parts. It told me that the drum is 4 inches high, so that's my height. And the diameter, remember, diameter goes all the way across, is 12 inches. So now that I have a visual to go along with it, I can identify the different parts. The height is 4 inches. My radius, half of the diameter, so 12 divided by 2 is 6. So the radius is 6 inches. Now I have everything I need to plug into my formula. Go ahead and plug those values in. 6 squared times the height. Volume equals, again, you can use that calculator if you want, 6 squared times the height, which is 4. This is in terms of pi. We want to write it as a decimal, so we're going to use 3.14 for pi. So I'm going to multiply 144 times 3.14. And then I need to remember my direction said to round to the nearest tenth. So I'm going to look at the tens place, look to the neighbor to the right. That number tells me whether I'm going to round up or round down. 5 or more, add 1 more. 4 or less, let it rest. This is a 6, so that means I need to add 1 more to my tens place. Volume is approximately 452.2 inches cubed. All right, pause the video, try the last problem on your own, then check back to see if you did it correctly. The Longhorn Band at the University of Texas has one of the world's largest bass drums, known as Big Bertha. Big Bertha has a diameter of 8 feet and is 4.5 feet deep. Find the volume. So again, I'm just going to draw a quick little visual. Label those parts. It said diameter, so I know that line is going all the way across to the other side. It's 8 feet. And the depth of this drum, so our height, is 4.5 feet. Fill in my information over here. I need to divide my diameter by 2 to find the radius. biggest mistake, most common mistake is using 8 for the radius when 8 is not your radius. 4 is the radius. Plug those values in. Substitute R in for R and H in for H. The radius squared times our height. 4 squared, 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times the height, 72. We want to express this as a decimal, so I'm going to multiply 72 times 3.14 for pi. And then remember, we need to round to the nearest tenths. So I'm going to look at the tenths place, look to the neighbor to the right. That 8 means I need to round up, so I'm going to add one more to my tenths place. 226.1 feet cubed. All right, guys, we are done with those examples. Really important you remember this formula. Remember, this first part here is just the area of the base, which is a circle. So the area of a circle is pi r squared. And then to find the volume of the cylinder, you just multiply it by the height. So area of the base times the height. Remember, if you are given a diameter, you need to divide it by 2 to determine the radius. Okay, guys, have a good rest of the day. I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.